I'm gonna totally need practice with that. Hello, everybody. This is Mic'd Up with Mike and Friends. Today we're talking about Oakland McCulloch, about his book, Leadership. His book is Your Leadership Legacy, but we're gonna be talking to him about his book, Leadership, Life, and just having a chit chat. Our panelists today are Mike and Sia. How you guys all doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Mike, for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on. And I hope everyone's doing well today.
Doing great.
Yeah. It's tough living here in Daytona Beach, Florida, but somebody's got to do it, Mike.
So how did you wind up in Daytona? What took you down there, and why did you wind up in Daytona?
Yeah, so I grew up in northern Illinois, up in your neck of the woods, which is why I live in Florida, because I'm never living through winters like that ever again. But I grew up in northern Illinois. My wife's parents were in northern Illinois, and after we got married, they moved down here to Florida, to Orlando area. And so we've been coming here for 30 something years on vacations and on holidays and those kinds of things. And my wife and I always said, we want to live in Central Florida. So, and when I retired, I got ready to retire from the Army. All my buddies said, "Hey, Oak, are you moving back up to Illinois?" And I said, "Listen to me. Just because my parents weren't very smart and lived in the North doesn't mean I have to be." So my wife and I made an agreement that we could never move further north. I don't care if we move a block. We got to move further south. We can't move further north.
Well, as somebody that has lived in Chicago and then moved to Texas and then went back to Chicago and then moved to Florida and then went back to Chicago, I'm going to try not to take any of those comments personally. I've escaped now a few times and I keep coming back. So I don't know how bright that makes me.
Oh, I love Chicago in the summertime. That's one of my favorite cities. Absolutely love it.
5 months out of the year, it's hard to beat. Well, 4 months out of the year, it's hard to beat, But I'm missing Dallas. That's down where Sia is.
Oh, it's a lovely, it's actually warm. It's cooling off again. It was just like 70 degrees and now it's 50 something degrees again. Then it was down to 40 and 30 and 20. I don't know what time of year this is right now.
Well, that's the one thing about Dallas. It's a little bit weird sometimes in the wintertime. Me and Mike, we know what we're gonna get. It's gonna be nothing but cold and misery.
So you live in the Chicago area, Mike?
Yeah, I'm about 20 minutes outside Chicago. I'm in the western suburbs in Addison.
Yeah, so, my wife grew up in Wakanda. So
Wakanda, Gotcha. So I don't blame you. My plan is to hopefully make a little bit of money with the Service Professionals Network thing, and maybe if I help enough people sell enough books, I can get down there to Tampa. Maybe if Sia trains me up on these podcast things well enough, I can get myself out of here. But it's a blistering 14 degrees today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what those temperatures mean at times. I mean, I know cognitively what 14 degrees means, but as a Californian living in Texas, it's like I just stay home at that temperature.
That's those 8 months in Tampa, that's kind of ruined me for winter. I think I'm just kind of in full hibernation mode. I was going to do the Wolverine thing again too, but I knew Michael would jump on that too, so I just kind of let it go.
I do want to see someone do that, like pot of boiling water and like throw it up in the air kind of thing and see it come out as snow.
I used to do that when I was a kid, but it kind of loses its luster after a while. Yeah. So Oakland, you're down in I'm sorry, you said you're down
Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach. So you out in the ocean a lot, or what you doing down there?
Yeah, so I do the recruiting, my day job. I do recruiting for the Army ROTC program here in the Daytona Beach area, which includes 4 colleges. But when I'm not doing leadership lectures and promoting my book and those things, I love to fish. So I have a yacht. I have a 17-foot John boat with a 40 horsepower engine, and I go back in the mangroves and I fish back there. I just went fishing last week, and I got 18 fish in about 3.5 hours. So,
well, that sounds like some living to me.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough living here.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So for some reason I was thinking, I don't know, maybe I'm not a very good reader with your book here, but I was thinking that you retired from the recruiting in 2019, but you're still doing that, huh?
So I retired from the Army in 2009, and then I ran a food bank, the day-to-day operation of a food bank for a couple of years, and then came here and did recruiting. So I've been recruiting since 2011, and 2019 was when I was selected as the recruiter of the year for Cadet Command. But yeah, I'm still recruiting, still doing it here and still love it. I mean, love working with young men and women who want to give back to this country of ours.
Well, I don't want to sound like a jerk, right? And I don't want to sound like un-American, but I'm really glad I never ran into you when I was, of age to actually sign up, because my ass would have been in the desert somewhere for sure.
Well, this is what I tell people all the time when I talk to them. I'm not a hard sell guy. I tell people, look, I'll tell you what I have to offer, what the Army has to offer, and then you got to decide if it's for you or not. Because it isn't for everybody. And I tell people that all the time. I said, but only you can decide if it's for you or not. I can just tell you what the Army has to offer, and then you got to figure out if it's for you or not.
Okay, but this is where I think this is why you're successful. It's because you've got this calm, zen practicality about you, where you're just like, sign me up. Okay, I'll do this. Like, I could tell right now, just listening to you, that if I was younger, I'd be like, oh, I can see this. I can do this.
He's a doer.
Well, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying, you're a doer. You're a man of action. You probably think about it half a second, and if it's in you, you go do it. And very few people like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But when I'm dealing with these young men and women, I realize that they're young men and women. I tell them that all the time. I say, look, you're 17, 18 years old. You think you know what you want. You don't know what you want. So what I tell them is, look, obviously you're interested because you came and found me. I didn't come find you. You came to me. So what I tell them is, look, take it for a semester. I promise you, after one semester here at college doing ROTC, you will know whether or not this is for you or not.
No, see, I didn't even know you could do that.
I didn't know you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never had anybody who took me up on that, who come back after that first semester and said, Colonel McCulloch, still not sure. They're either sign me up, get me out of here. And it's all right, because it isn't for everybody.
What do you think the percentage is, the ratio?
So we actually have a pretty good percentage of people who are staying in the program here. But it varies year to year, and depending on what's going on in the world. Right now with the economy the way it is, a lot of people are deciding that this Army thing, guaranteed job after they graduate.
I tell you what, I'd be all over it right now if I was this age right now, and I'd be all over it. See, when 2001, right, I was like 21, 22, and I had a business. I had like 101 employees. But when those towers got hit, I was like, man, I was really considering going. But then I thought about it. I'm like, they don't need my help, and I got this business going, and every selfish reason in the book, right? But to touch on the subject today, right, why I really think I'd be terrible at the Army, Sia, is because we had an appointment today. Even had it in Google. We had it on the schedule. I messed up the time like 3 times, the Eastern Standard Time. He calls me up at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time, and I was like, oh man, we can go now. I can try to get him on. This guy gave me so much grace, and I tell you what, I'm glad I don't have a pen nowadays, because I'd be signing up if you could. For
Hey, Oakland.
Yeah,
Mike O'Connor uses a sundial.
So that's pretty hard in Chicago at this time of the year.
Yeah, see, that's his problem. He's got a reason, buddy.
This is why I brought him on here. Good looks, and he backs me up. He helps me.
There you
go. Hey, with friends, who needs enemies, right? So
that's right.
So we were actually talking. Let me make sure I get this right. So I actually read your book because I'm a good friend. I came across your LinkedIn profile, and people don't realize I do this, right? But like our friend Red, I saw his beard and big red beard one day, right? So I just sent him a message and I was like, hey, nice beard, right? I think I saw your profile, and I think I just bought your book. Am I wrong?
No, you did. And then you told me that you bought it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how we got connected. It was like, but see, what caught me about it was I saw a picture, and this is where I've been failing this guy here. And he's been nice about it the whole time, right? Because the one thing he asked me to do besides buy a copy of this book was go out and take a picture of it somewhere. But it's 14 degrees. So I haven't been in a big hurry to go stand in front of the Chicago Bean and take a picture of this.
There you go.
No, man.
But unlike Michael and Sia here, I actually did get a copy. And we were talking earlier, Mike and I. You had received 31 military service awards, including the Bronze Star, 8 Meritorious Service Medals, and the Humanitarian Service Medal.
You know what? Out of all those medals, out of all the medals and awards I've ever gotten, the ones that mean the most to me are my humanitarian service medals. And somebody asked me why, and I said because I got those by helping people here in America. It was after Hurricane Hugo in Charleston, and it was after Hurricane Andrew down here in South Florida. And I went for, I think, 90 days after Charleston. I was in Charleston for 90 days after Hugo, helping do some reconstruction and running a warehouse where me and my platoon were in there. And then after Andrew down in here in Florida, I was a company commander then. And our company came down here for like 100 and something days. Did all kinds of things. I had a big company then, and I had cooks. So we set up a kitchen, and we were feeding people. We were helping people.
That's awesome.
Put things together. So those two awards mean more to me than any of the rest of them put together.
I used to do water restoration. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I was certified in mold and water restoration for 20 years. I actually was down at Hurricane Ike down there. I've been to a couple of different hurricanes myself. And my point here is I don't think people realize all the things that the Army actually does for the citizens of this country in our times of need, especially when there's a disaster. And, being one of the guys that was like, I don't know, how do you say it, behind the lines, of a disaster zone where the only people there are the restoration people in the Army, it gets pretty crazy. You guys have to do crowd control. People are stealing stuff from people's homes. I mean, unfortunately, you see the best and the worst in people, right?
Right, you do.
And then you get the Army, and these guys, in the middle of the night, you have to police people that aren't doing the best of things. They may be armed, they may not be armed, but they're also American citizens, so you can't exactly walk up with your guns. Like, just in my time in some of the hurricane zones that I've seen, that really changed my perception of the Army and what you guys have to deal with just on our home turf that people don't realize. So,
and one of the things that I always tell, because I was an infantry guy and an armor guy, combat arms guy. I knew nothing about warehouses. I knew nothing about all that kind of stuff. But that's what I did when as a brand new lieutenant, they sent me to Charleston, and I ran a warehouse.
Figure it out on the fly, huh?
Absolutely. All the stuff coming in, and my guys and I, we cataloged it, we stored it, and then as they started to rebuild stuff, and people came and needed this stuff, then we signed it out to them. And so we kind of kept track of all the relief equipment and supplies that were coming in, and handed them out as need be, on top of helping going out and feeding people and doing all those kinds of things as well, clearing roads, all that kind of stuff.
That's pretty cool. So, Mike, I guess you were spot on with your assessment. He just goes out and does things. I guess we're gonna have to go endorse this guy for logistics or something now.
No, don't do that.
Is that on your LinkedIn profile?
But it's funny because I don't have a logistics background, but that was part of my job in the food bank. I was the associate director, and I ran the day-to-day operations of the food bank. And one of the things, of course, was picking up food from donors and then distributing food to food pantries and other places that were handing the food out. And then having food handouts as well, coordinating all that. So I did have to learn some logistics piece of it. But, again, I think with leadership, if you're a good leader, then you find the people who are good at what you need to get done. If you don't know how to do it, you find the people that are good at it, and you trust them, and you give them the resources, you give them the authority to make things happen, and they make you look good.
Awesome.
Dude.
I think you nailed something right there. Excuse me, Oak. The leadership recognizing strengths and weaknesses. I feel like at times there is this assumption that if you're a leader, you're supposed to, quote, be the one in the front and, guiding people, and, in the military, barking orders at. I mean, I think that's kind of like a natural tendency. So in the military, how did you avoid that? Like, how did you in your civilian life understand that there's a time and place when you need to bark orders and other times when you're like,
That's a great question.
Trust someone?
Yeah, well, I actually learned that in the military, and I because I'm a believer in servant leadership. I believe that that it isn't about you, and that's chapter 2 of the book. And when I give my leadership presentation, I spend a whole lot of time on it. That chapter 2 is, it's not about you, it's all about you. It's not about you, and it's not about your privileges. It's not about you making more money. It's not about you living in a nicer house or any of that kind of stuff. About a better title. It is all about you taking care of people. And if you take care of people, then they take care of the organization for you. And one of my favorite quotes is by General Powell, who was, by the way, the most impressive man I have ever met in my life.
Oh, I'm okay. Hold on one second.
You
You seem like a pretty cool cat, right? And I've met some pretty cool people in my life, right? And I don't get too envious of too many people about weird things, right? But I'm kind of jealous of that one. You know, I mean, how long did you get to chat with him?
Oh, not very long at all, but I didn't have to.
Long enough, right?
You want to hear the story about that one?
Yes, that's what we got.
Yeah. So it was during the first Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was a general's aide. So I was, I worked for a 1-star general, and I basically ran his day-to-day operations and made sure he got where he was supposed to be and did the things he was supposed to do. And so they put up a tent out in the middle of the desert, and all the generals, a whole bunch of generals, 1, 2, 3, 4-star generals came, and they sat in this tent. All the aides were sitting at not sitting. We were standing at the back of the tent with our backs up against the tent, and all the generals are in there talking. And General Powell walks in the tent. Everybody's talking. General Powell walks in that tent you could have heard a pin drop. Oh, everybody knew who was in charge, and it wasn't them. It was General Powell. And when he walked in, I got to listen to him talk to the generals, tell them, great little talk. Well, all the aides, we ran when he got done, they were all still talking a little bit among themselves. All the aides, us that really didn't matter, we went out to get all the vehicles and everything ready for our generals who were going to come out of the tent. And so I'm out there, and I got my vehicle there, and I see General Powell is the first general to walk out. And when he walks out, there's a sergeant and a specialist standing right there. So 2 low-ranking individuals standing right outside the tent. General Powell walks over and starts talking to him, just like he was talking to the 3- and 4-star generals.
How awesome is that?
Now, if I remember that 40 years ago,
imagine how they feel.
Can you imagine that specialist and that sergeant? What that meant to them? I mean, that's the type of person he was. He didn't have to go talk to them. He could have walked right by, could have just said hi and walked right by. But no, he stopped. And I mean, he talked to him. He probably talked to him for about 10 minutes.
You know, what's funny is a lot of times military politics, those are the type of people that rise to the top and that people remember too, because I mean, it just goes a long way.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty cool, man. Thanks for sharing that one with us. Another thing, and I don't want to be like cheesy by showing your book here. Not like I'm trying to make up for not taking that picture, right? I don't want to give away too much in the book, right? But I don't want to be pretentious again, right? But I'm known for kind of falling on my sword and doing the right thing, even when I know it's going to bite me in the ass, right? And anyone who's connected with me on LinkedIn's probably heard some gossip about me for one thing or another, right? And
it's all true.
A lot of it is. a lot of it is. We'll be honest. But one thing I wanted to ask you, and without giving away too much in the book, right, is your OER experience. Right. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I believe that leaders do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And it's not even if nobody is ever going to see it or know about it, you still do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And it's even more important when other people are involved because of how they're involved in the situation. So I was a company commander, and I had a soldier in my unit who was doing bad things. And he was a sergeant first class. I mean, he was a senior NCO, and he was doing bad things.
He's been in it for a while.
He'd been in for 17 years. He had soldiers that worked for him, and he was borrowing money from the soldiers. He was writing bad checks. He owed a bunch of money all over town. He had a DUI, driving under the influence, and then he hit his wife, and the police were called. So I decided it was time to get rid of this soldier. I was going to kick him out of the Army, and so I started that process. And I had a boss who called me in and said, "Oh, you're not doing this," and I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he goes, "No, you're not." I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, that soldier has 17 years in the Army. He has a right to retire. And I said, "Sir, nobody has a right to retire from the Army. You earn that right. You earn your retirement. You don't get that handed to you." I said, "I am going to kick him out of the Army." And he said, "Well, if you keep doing on this route, it will reflect on your officer evaluation report." And I said, "I'm doing it." So, and he didn't lie. It did reflect on my officer evaluation.
and good for you, right, for not naming names or being one of those guys either. I mean, you're telling the story, right? But you're not throwing
No need for names.
I mean, like, look, I hate sycophants, right? But I got to be one for her for a second, right? Because like I got to acknowledge the fact that you just by reading your book, and it confirmed a few things for me, right? And you also teach me lessons along the way through our conversations, so I appreciate that too, right? Because it's important to do the right thing, and that guy who's nameless or girl, whoever was above you, right? We didn't name names. Shame on them. First of all, shame on them, right? I mean, everybody's supposed to have, each other's backs, and 17 years is a long time to throw it down. But like, you're not talking about like a guy who went out and got drunk one night, right? Or a guy who did one thing, right? Like he's doing all these horrible things, borrowing money, bouncing checks, right? There's a pattern, right?
That's it.
And not only that, but like the guys in leadership. So you're literally training everybody else that this is okay.
That's right. And well, and that's the whole thing, and what I kept telling people was the impact that this leader has on that organization and the soldiers and the people who work.
Everybody that they come across for the rest of their lives. The butterfly effect. I mean,
absolutely.
Drove you mad, didn't it? Like, I mean,
so that wasn't even an issue for me. That was a done deal, and I can look in the mirror every morning and I know I did the right thing.
Yeah, when you're on your 17-foot fucking boat off the mangrove, pardon my language, right? Having a gold.
Watch your language.
Yeah, I didn't say it all. My apologies, right? But good for you, right? Because I mean, like it didn't, there must have been bad days, right? And consequences and things that probably weren't ideal, right?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that situation impacted my career. It's probably why I retired a lieutenant colonel, and there were jobs that I would have liked to have had that I did not get because of that officer evaluation report. But again, if I had to do it all over again today, knowing what
isn't it crazy though, the red tape? The red tape. I mean, you were in there for 23 years, right? You're in all these medals. You go out there and get shot at. You stay in the line, do all the things you're supposed to do, right? And then you wind up doing the right thing, and they still clip your wings. I mean, that's
well, I mean, and you know those things are possible, and especially in the military, that if you buck the system, you're going to pay a price. But if you're doing it for the right reason, and and I used to tell people all the time that worked for me when I was a company commander, when I had people work for me, when I was a professor of military science, I always told people, you cannot tell somebody no immediately. If somebody asks you to do something for them, you cannot tell them no. Even if it's against the rules, if it's against regulations, you cannot tell them no. If you have to tell them no, you come talk to me, and we'll figure out if there's a way to make it happen to take care of people. Because I'm a firm believer you can't let rules and regulations prevent you from helping people, from taking care of people, because that's what leaders are here for. Leadership is about people. And if we don't remember that, then you're not going to be a good leader. I mean, it is not about organizations. It's not about spreadsheets. It's not about strategies or plans, it's about people. And you got to learn how to take care of people. And if you take care of people, they'll take care of you.
First of all, right, I can see why you're, again, we're going to reiterate that, I can see why you're a great recruiter, right? But what I think is interesting is all the balance you must put into place when you're just talking to people and influencing people, versus that one guy that kind of, that you got him out of the army, right? And you want him doing the right thing. But you think about that commander, right? I don't know if he's still in place. I don't know if he's still doing his thing. Probably not, because it's been a long time, right? But you're counteracting a lot just by being who you are. So, I don't think most people realize that.
Hey, Mike. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oakland.
Yeah.
I was going to let you finish what Mike said.
You already segued it, buddy. You kind
of already interrupted, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, we're all thinking about something else now. What do you got to say, buddy?
My Zoom froze, and then I just looked stupider than normal. I'm used to
Where's your hat, by the way?
I left it. So like people are like, I don't get the redneck thing, but wait till normal. Hey,
I gotta get my Scottish hat on because we're talking.
So, again, like most people, Oakland, I know people have military family, and there's a lot of rule taking and people who have to follow the rules. And we got rules for a reason, but I just heard you state that the rules are there for the people. So if we have to change the rules in order to make it better for people and process and efficiency of our mission, will do that. But I also know that that's easier said than done in the military. So how did you go about? I'm just going to give it to you. But how did you? Because that's not easy. I mean, especially
it isn't. And so there were times, if I could do it, I would go through the system and try to make, go to my bosses. Hey, boss, I know that this is what the rule says. Let's use some common sense here. I know there's a common sense, one of those things.
Common sense, common decency.
Wow, we don't, we don't understand that concept anymore. But I go to them and say, common sense, boss. This doesn't make sense. We got to take care of this person. And sometimes they'd say yes, sometimes they'd say no. And if they said no, if I thought it was strong enough that I thought that we had to do something, I have gone to some of my soldiers, my NCOs that were in charge of making things happen that I needed to have happen, who understood that by rules or regulations, they couldn't do what I was asking them to do. And I'd say, do it. And here's a memo that says that I told you to do it. And you hang on to this. So if anybody ever comes back and is on you, just hand them this memo and tell them to come see me. And I used to do things like that all the time. And you know what? I didn't do it just to do it, to make people mad, to get away with stuff. I did it when it made sense. And I never, ever had anybody come back to me and say, why'd you do that?
That's
or if they did come and ask me that and I told them, they'd say, okay, got it. And
because they'd be a PR nightmare if they did.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if I can interject on this, because I've interviewed quite a few veterans, my background, cybersecurity and IT stuff, but what I'm hearing from these veterans are telling me that there's a lot of more freedom for decision making in the military than people realize. I think when we're talking about rules, it's almost like a guide to say, look, these are the parameters and lanes that we like you to be in, but there's a lot of open box thinking, figure it out, because on the battlefield, for example, and again, I'm speaking anecdotally, so people call me out on my BS, but when you're on the battlefield, rules kind of go throughout the wayside, right? When you're in the thick of engagement, you just have to think quickly on your feet, trust in your team, know that these rails are there for a reason. So like if there's like orders being barked out, you're following through. But can you tell me about this open-mindedness that you're offering and suggesting? Because I feel like that happens more often than not with great leaders in the military.
I would absolutely agree that the good leaders understand that. Now, there are some, and I've worked for them, those people who, this is the rule, we're going to do it this way. You're going to do it my way because I'm in charge. We all hate working for people like that, the micromanagers. And I had a boss who retired, a 4-star general, great man, a good mentor of mine. I think I worked for him 3 times over my 23-year career. And he used to say, Oak, leadership is on a scale. And on one end, you've got micromanagers, those authoritarian, you're going to do it this way, my way. And then on the other end, you got Attila the Hun in chaos. He said, you want to be as close to chaos as you can be. He said, as much as you feel like you can be that close to it, you want to get as close to it as you can. And he said, the way you do it is 2 ways. You give away authority, and you give away the resources and everything that somebody needs to do something. And then you let people do stuff. You say, this is what I want done. You tell them what the picture looks like. You give them the resources and you give them the authority. This is what I want. Walk away and let them do it. And I've always believed in that, and it's worked for me. And I think that people enjoy working for people like that, rather than that somebody who stands over your shoulder and says, I've given you this thing to do, but I wouldn't do it that way. And if you do, I would do this or what. Then do it yourself. Either get out of my way and let me do it, or you do it yourself. But absolutely. I think you're finding, at least I have found, that the really good leaders in the Army, and there are some very good leaders in the Army, are the ones who believe in servant leadership and giving away as much authority as they can give. But there are still plenty of them in the Army that, and as everywhere.
People are people, man.
That's everywhere. Right. I don't care what profession. There's bad people in every profession.
I'm sure, you probably hear it all the time, right? Like, you're a leader in the Army. How does that translate to being a leader in the real world, right?
Yeah. I hear that, and I laugh at people, because I always tell people, because I get people who walk up to me and say, well, all your leadership experiences in the Army, so you know how to lead the Army, but you don't know how to lead anywhere else. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Leadership is leadership. I don't care where you learn it. I don't care where you practice it. If you can lead people, you can lead anything. And I'm a perfect example of that. Again, I knew nothing about a food bank when I took over the day-to-day operation of a food bank. You know, I was a combat arms guy. I killed people and blew stuff up. And now I'm running a food bank. You don't get 180 degrees more than that. And when I took over, we were handing out, I think it was 1.4 million pounds of food a year. When I left 18 months later, we were handing out 3.8 million pounds of food.
I don't know why. I just thought about you shooting it out of a cannon at people. I mean, that's
like Evel Knievel style. No,
well,
no, he's doing himself. He did
ordinance. I mean,
right. Again, it's all about people and it's about leadership.
Shooting bread at people, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So if you take care of people and if you use their experience, because I don't care how long you've been doing something, you don't own all the ways to do something. You don't have all the experience. And you know what taught me that. And it's funny because my first job as a platoon leader, I was an infantry platoon leader.
How old were you at the time?
I was 24 years old. So I was 24 and I show up at my battalion and there are 3 lieutenants like me. 3 of us show up at the same time and there's one platoon leader spot open. And I got that spot.
How many people are in a platoon?
There are 32 people in the platoon.
Okay. Not including you 3.
That included me. Those other lieutenants weren't in my platoon. Okay. They got to go to a staff office.
So you're basically in charge of 31 separate people.
Yep, absolutely. So I get the platoon slot. My company commander takes me out to my platoon, who's already out in the field doing a live fire training for a live fire exercise they're going to do. So they're doing a dismounted live fire exercise. So I show up. My platoon sergeant, they were eating lunch. My platoon sergeant says, "Come on over here, Lieutenant." My platoon sergeant is a sergeant first class NCO. He calls me over and he says, "Look, you're the lieutenant. You're in charge. We're going to do things the way you want to do them." But I've been in the Army for 23 years. So he had been in the
24
Army
at the time.
He had been in the Army almost as long as I'd been alive.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there. But yeah.
So he says, "I've seen it done every which way you can imagine." He said, "We're going to do it the way you want to do it. But if you're and you're going to screw up, I'm going to tell you." And I said, "Great." And he did. And he told me, he said, "If I tell you you're screwing up, you better pay attention to me, Lieutenant." And I said, "Yeah, I got you." So we got done talking, and he said, "Well, now you come over and you can watch us do this dismounted live fire exercise." "No, I'm not watching." I said, "Your job is to run the machine guns. My job is to lead the soldiers across the objective while you shoot the machine guns in front of me." So here I am, first day, don't know anybody but the platoon sergeant. And
live firing.
And we're running across the objective, and I mean literally, there are machine gun bullets.
Was there a part of you was like
going across?
Oh my goodness!
My platoon sergeant said to me, he said, "But you don't know anybody in this platoon." I said, "Platoon sergeant, I know you, and that's good enough." And you know how much money I made that day?
No.
With that platoon? I mean, they would have done anything I asked them to do.
Wow.
But I listened to that platoon sergeant. I give Sergeant Pinson, Sergeant First Class Pinson, who eventually became Master Sergeant Pinson, who now unfortunately is dead. He died after he retired. But I give him so much credit for making me the lieutenant that I was and helping develop my leadership skills, because he played a huge part in it.
It's kind of cool, man. You know, thanks for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. Let me ask another silly question, right?
Yeah, there are no silly questions, Mike.
You're a platoon leader, right? How many of those guys were actually older than
you? Probably 5 of them were probably older than me. Most of them were 18 to 21-year-olds.
Gotcha.
But you know, all the senior NCOs. So I had a platoon sergeant. He'd been in for 23 years, and then I had 3 staff sergeants who probably had been in for 15, 16 years. So they were probably 30.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Huh. So you learn, you know, if you're smart, you listen to those people who have all that experience and all that knowledge. Because if you don't, then you as the leader, you're only using your knowledge and your experience.
There's so many bad things. And, you know, I'm sure I'm telling you something I already know, but I'm trying to, you know, everybody else, right? So many people don't listen to that guy who's been there for that long, right? And not only are you not taking advice that can help you, but now you're pissing that guy off and you're creating a bad feeling between you and them, right? And that little bit of common courtesy, that common sense, just being empathetic and, listening to what they have to say, whether you're going to do it or not, you know what I mean? Just listening to them makes all the difference.
Oh, absolutely, Mike. I mean, one of the things I always tell people is one of the ways I always like to make decisions when I have time, and most of the time you do, is if we had something to do, or if I had a decision to make, or we had a problem, I'd bring my junior leaders in, my NCOs, and I'd say, okay, guys and gals now. But then when I was a platoon leader, guys, I'd say, here is what we got to do. Give me some ideas. And, one of the great things that I figured out throughout my time in the Army is that a good idea is a good idea, whether it comes from a private, the lowest person in your unit, or if it comes from a general.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
A bad idea is a bad idea, whether it comes from a private or a general. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
So I would throw it out there and I'd let people tell me what their ideas were. And you'd be surprised. You'd get some great ideas from people that you never thought would give you a good idea. And you'll get some bad ideas from people you thought would give you great
You reevaluate all kinds of things on a daily basis.
So then what I've found generally is then I would take a little bit from this person, a little bit of idea from that person, throw in my ideas, and that would be our solution. Two things you've done when you do that. Number one, the people in your organization now buy into your organization because they realize they're a valued member of your organization. You listen to what they have to say.
They feel respected.
You didn't use what they had to say. You at least listened. And number two, the second thing you have done is you have gotten them to buy into the solution, because it's no longer Colonel McCulloch's solution. It's our solution. We came up with it. We agreed on it. Now they got skin in the game. So they're going to work extra hard to make sure that it works.
I think right there, you guys both have said the word over and over and over again, is listening. Listen.
Absolutely.
But then with the leadership in your position is to have the wisdom of experience to extrapolate the data given to you to determine, hey, is this a great path forward? I think you just nailed that example, I think, very well to what applies, right? And Mike A., I know it looks like you have to leave in a couple of minutes. I just saw your note here. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you always have great opinions and thoughts before you go.
Again, people say, well, the Army, well, you were a good leader at the Army, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good at X, Y, and Z. And it's just talking to Oakland. I mean, I think we're all in agreement. It's leadership is leader. Good people's skills are good people's skills.
That's right.
People want to be valued and they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And it's no doubt that Oakland had the same effect on people in a food bank that he did in the military or volunteering. Whatever he does is who he is, whether that's going to hurt him or help him. I just think it says a lot about his character, because I was a firefighter and I also went from firefighting to leading a food bank. And it was, what qualifications did I have? But they hired me based on my confidence and competence that you could put me anywhere.
That's
and
right.
I'm going to figure out a way to thrive and survive. And we did the same thing. We went from 1 million to 3 million in 2.5. But again, it was unique because it was the shared vision. And I love when you said that. I'm buying your book. You hold me to it. I'm buying it today. If I don't, you come over here and kick my country butt. All right. But
when it's warm out, you got to get out and take a picture of it like this.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, you build a snowman, and then put the book in the snowman. No excuses, man. This guy ain't going to hear no excuses. I hope you build it. All right. But I just appreciate your service to the country.
15 times now.
Your service doesn't just stop its military service. Your whole life is service. And I applaud that and I appreciate that. I know a lot of people.
Well, and thank you for your service as a fireman. I tell you what, I have utmost respect for firemen, policemen, the first responders for today, and the way we're treating policemen and firemen today is just
painful,
criminal. But yes, so thank you. And it really is. It's all about how you treat people, and I don't care what profession you are. I don't care what job you have. I don't care any of that. It's about how you treat people, and if you treat people right, you're gonna be successful. My father had growing up. My father had this thing called the 75% rule. And he said, son, if you can't do something better than 75% of the people doing it, you need to do one of two things.
Oh,
You either need to figure out how to get better at it, or you need to go find something else to do, because obviously it doesn't matter to you. And I live by that rule. And, you know, I don't care if I was sweeping a floor. I wanted to be the best floor sweeper there was.
Hey, and I got a roll, but that's the most encouraging thing, because coming from you, I know I'm not off track. I said that the other day. I said, look, I'm going to be the best daggum money coach in ball, or I'm going to go find something my silly butt can do well, like a rodeo clown or something else out there, right?
Why not both?
Any of your accomplishments, Oak, right? But the redneck money coach here, first of all, he's a financial guy. He works with everybody, not just rednecks, right? But he's inherently cheap as a financial guy. For him to spend $15 on your book, get the hard copy too. Don't get the Audible. Buy the real book.
Get the real copy.
Yeah, you can't take a picture with the Audible.
Well, I got ADD, so I'll read maybe one chapter a year. But I tell you why I buy books.
You can get a little shelf in your dentist's office there.
The person that wrote the book, that's and again, talking to Oakland, I'm not the only one. They now I want to go see, because this is the guy that put this in. I'll be stupid not to learn from this guy. That's how I look at it. So great opportunity. Yeah, be here. Guys, I appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for coming on up. Have a good day, man.
You too, buddy. Bye. See you.
See ya.
And then there was less. Well, Oakland, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, and I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing some stories with us. Sia, is there anything that you wanted to follow up with?
I mean, look, this to me is such a no-brainer conversation to have, right? Because I think leadership, all of us, it doesn't matter what our role is. And I think that's something I like to reiterate as a former corporate employee. You can be a leader in your own role, in your own way, without necessarily the title. And I think that's a great reinforcement of listening. And that we didn't talk about, and I got to ask you, because I think you do it intuitively.
We get all the time in the world.
Mike, not so much, but for you, Oak, I do believe it. I think it's more intuitive, is this empathy. You exude empathy, which we were talking about earlier about,
I care about people.
So anyway, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, seriously, you do this. You do exude this, and I think it's why we were talking about you being successful as a recruiter, right? Is you exude this,
it does. It radiates
comfort, right? You're listening, which is critical, right? Everyone wants to be heard, right, and validated, but validated in a way that, you're connecting on an emotional level. So, is this something that you've developed over time, or is that in you? Because I think that's one of the successful ingredients to be a very successful and liked leader.
Yeah, well, I think that I've been that way for most of my life, and unlike giving my father credit for the 75% rule, the empathy, it comes from my mother, not my father. Believe me, my father was a mean old man, so I get none of that from him. But I think that I do try to listen to people, and I try to be positive, but
Oh,
I'm also very honest with people. I am brutally honest with people. I get young men and women who say to me, Colonel McCulloch, I'm going to be a doctor. And I say, great. What the world needs more doctors. What'd you score on your ACT, SAT? A 19. You're not going to be a doctor. And I'm not trying to be mean to people. And I tell them that. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm just trying to be realistic. I mean, that's not what doctors get on their ACT score. So I do feel for people, and I try to help them as much as I can. And but I'm a realist in that I believe that helping somebody, sometimes you got to hurt. You can't just tell them what they want to hear. That's not helping people. And when I tell people I believe in servant leadership, which is part of the empathy and all that, they say, well, I don't believe in servant leadership, because then you just let people walk all over you. And I say, really? You've talked to me for 5 minutes. You think I let people walk?
That's crazy though, but you hear it all the time, don't you?
Yeah. And I said,
do you have a standard reply to that? Because I hope you do, because I want to be educated on this one.
Yeah, I always tell them that servant leadership does not mean that you let people do whatever they want. In fact, servant leadership guarantees you are going to hurt people's feelings, and you're going to make people mad sometimes, because you're going to make them do what is good for them. Even if they don't believe it's good for them, you're going to make them do what's good for them. And so you're going to make some people mad, and that's okay.
I'm
Because
so glad.
in the end, you're still thinking about their best interest, not yours.
I'm
Oh,
so
interesting.
glad.
I
I'm
think it's
so
a, I
glad.
think it's a misnomer. I think servant, I think just at least in American language, I don't know if it's UK, England, or anywhere other. Servant has that connotation of subservient, right?
Yeah.
And I think is it a branding problem, or is it no intentionally to say no? I'm here to
Well, I do believe
support.
that it means that you're not, that you put other people's interest ahead of your own, and the organization's interest ahead of your own. You know, when we commission lieutenants out of here, when we do our commissioning program, like this year, we're going to commission 65, 66 lieutenants. At the commissioning ceremony, I always make a point to walk up to them and I tell them, look, today is all about you. It's a great day. Celebrate it. It's all about your accomplishment. I said, but once we pin that bar on your shoulder and now you're a leader, it will never be about you ever again. It's about your soldiers. It's about the mission. It's about the unit. It's about the Army. It's about the country. And then if we have time, we might be able to talk about you, maybe. But it's all about that. And if you don't understand that as a leader, I don't think you can be a good leader. I just don't. You're going to be one of those guys or gals who doesn't understand that it's about listening to people. It's about taking care of people. It's about all those things. And again, if you do those things well, if you take care of people, if you listen to people, then they're going to take care of you, and you're going to get your reward in the end anyway, because the organization is going to be successful and you're going to get what you want.
100%.
But it's about them. And if you take care of them, everything else falls into place. At least that's my view. And it's worked out pretty well for me.
So, so Elizabeth asks a question here, and I'm actually kind of curious for you. There's this discussion of like, military life and then civilian life. How was your transition, and are you seeing a trend or changes in, all societies evolve over time, but are you seeing a change in or adjustment from going from military to civilian life? Like, how was your transition? And Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of reading it and talking at the same time, but I think that's what she's asking.
So I think that to me, it wasn't that hard of a transition, again, because I believe leadership is taking care of people. Now, moving from the military world where I was, and I hate that word expert, but I'd been doing it for 23 years. I knew what I was doing. I knew how the military worked. Moving to a food bank where I didn't know anything about a food bank. I had a sharp learning curve that I had to do. But you know how I did it? Again, about people. That whole first month, 2 months I was there, I just walked around all day talking to people. So why are you doing it that way? What is it that what's your job, and why are you doing it the way you're doing it? What if we tried something else? Do you have any ideas to how to make it better? What's your idea? And so I learned what was going on in the food bank by everybody who was doing their job, by who was doing their job. That's who I learned what the jobs were. And so I kind of built my expertise, my knowledge from learning from the people who were actually there. Two things. I learned it from them. And number two, again, the boss is coming down and talking to me. He's right here where I work. He's coming to me and talking to me. I'm not going to him. I mean, they now begin to think, rightfully so, that they matter and that they're important and they're a valued member of the team. And so you're taking care of people in the ways that leaders should take care of people.
I have a question. One more. Sorry, Mike. I know you know. I'll keep going. Like, no,
dude,
I'm curious. Like,
I'll keep talking all day to you guys. I just don't want to take up all this time.
No, I know. We definitely have a hard stop here. So, but how much do you think we have to cultivate curiosity in order to be able to get those questions and to get that empathy and to learn more? I mean, is that something that can be cultivated, or do you think naturally, if you're curious, you're just going to be?
Well, I think there are people who are naturally curious and want to ask questions and want to learn and know things. But I think that we can teach people how to be, and I think we're not doing a good job of it right now. Critical thinking. We are not, and that's what kind of leads to those.
We're kind of shutting it down, right?
We are, at least what I see it in colleges. I see that, professors today don't want to teach you how to think. They want to teach you what to think. And that's the wrong answer. We have to get back to creating creative thinkers who who think about the problems that are out there and then ask the questions. They're not going to have all the answers, and that's okay. Again, leaders don't always have all the answers, and that's okay. But go find the people, allow people who do have answers or ideas to bring them up, and then we can all come together and figure out what the right ideas are to work to. Again, maybe putting 2 or 3 of those ideas together to make a plan to then solve the problem. But you leaders who think that they have all the answers and that they don't have to listen to people, horrible leaders. But that's what we're training. That's what we're teaching in college today, is not how to think, but what to think. And that's the wrong answer, in my opinion.
Why do you think we allow that as a society?
I have no idea. And I fight against it all the time. When I get brand new freshmen into the program, the first thing I tell them is, number one, when you get your list of professors, Google them. Find out who they are, what they are, why they believe what they believe, because that's going to tell you what their bias is. And we all have biases. Anybody who tells you they're not biased is lying to you.
Brilliant advice.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having a bias as long as you don't force that on somebody else. We all grew up a certain way. We all learn things a certain way. We all have bias. That's okay. Find out what that person's bias is, and that'll tell you why they're teaching you what they're teaching you. And then it's up to you, once they teach you something, to figure out if it's the right thing or not. You have to do some of your own research to figure that out.
Well, I think that's where a lot of us fail, right? Is the research. Maybe, like you said, some people are just naturally inquisitive, right? So if I come across somebody's profile, the first thing I'm going to do is read the summary, read everything about them. That's part of the reason why I bought your book. This is like, wow, this guy seems like an interesting guy. Probably going to have to buy his book, right? Because you took the time and effort to put all that stuff in your LinkedIn profile. So I assumed it was important to you. And I feel like most people, they really don't read any of that stuff, like a vast majority.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
What's frightening to me, and I've seen this way more often than not, is I think for us, we're older. We're used to going to the, Encyclopedia Britannica. We're used to, like, if we don't know the answer, we're going to go dig around for it. I'm shocked at some of the younger generation, my nieces and nephews. They'll ask me questions that I'm like, go Google it or go DuckDuckGo it. Go look it up. It's not hard to do.
It's not even the younger generation, though. It's people that are older than me. And being who I am and what I do, I get 8,000 notifications an hour, right? And 6,000 of them are stuff people can Google, right? But I enjoy good questions. And Red Hair actually has a good question I was thinking about, but my ADD keeps taking over a little bit, right? Which is basically, how do you handle a less than ideal leader if you're in the lesser position?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've had to deal with that, obviously, a couple of times. And so what I tell people is, look, obviously, if you have a leader above you that's in charge of you, there's not a whole lot you can do to change that person, unfortunately. You can try, and I've walked into my boss's office and said, hey, boss, what you're doing is wrong. And you get one of two reactions. They either say, okay, well, let's talk about it and let's figure it out. Or they say, get out of my office, Lieutenant, and go do what I tell you to do. Okay, good. I tried. So what you have to do as the lesser ranking leader is, in my opinion, you have to be the buffer between that toxic leader and the people that work for you. So you take all the crap. And you still got to do the things that this guy or gal wants to do because they are in charge, but you got to try to figure out the best way to do it to take care of the people in your organization and to kind of shield them from some of the stuff that they don't need to know about, they don't need to worry about, they don't need to deal with. You deal with that as a leader. Again, it's not about you, it's about the people that work for you. So you take care of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's a thankless job, but look, people tend to pick up on things like patterns, right? And how many soldiers were underneath you, and they kind of pick up on it over time that, hey, this guy, he's shielding us from a lot of this crap. You know what I mean? Like, people the proof's always in the pudding. Just the truth always comes to light in one way or the other. And then that's another way to show people that you care about them. And it's another way to get the people underneath you more motivated, right? Because if you're the guy who comes back and you trauma dump on them, hey, these are the things I don't agree with, you're adding cancer to your own issue too. So
I love the fact that you said, like, do the research of like the professor. You can apply that to your career, right? Like, do the research on your future boss or your
Oh,
current boss. And
Your
it's
girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever.
for
No,
Mike.
I'm serious.
Are
Like,
you doing that? I don't know if you're doing that,
no, I
sir.
mean, like, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna find out somebody's a creep, it might as well be date one, right? Like, you know, like
But
I had a friend, right? She was dating this guy for like 3 months, and she's like, "Oh, well, you had 14 DUIs." It's like, well, you know, a Google check would have saved you a lot of time, you know.
what I was gonna just say is, for all intents and purposes, it's that, study. It's what's that saying, that like, if you know your professor, and then you'll ace a class no matter what the subject may be.
Absolutely.
So
I
if
think
you know their by, like you say, like, if you know how to, I don't want to say know how to take the test. If you know your professor, it's just like life. If you know your boss, you know how to work them, right? Is
Yeah,
it
well,
manipulation, you guys? Is that manipulation?
Well, it is
no, it's not.
manipulation.
And I think, not only your boss, but know the company. What I used to tell people is, when I get a brand new lieutenant we just commissioned, who's going out, I ask them, what unit are you going to? And they'll tell me I'm going to 10th Mountain Division. And I said, so tell me a little bit of the history of the 10th Mountain Division. And they'll say, well, I don't know. I said, you think that might be important? I said, you may not like history, but you are joining an organization that loves its history.
That's proud
You
of
better
it.
start learning some history, young man or young lady, because it's important. And if you're applying for a job for a company, you might want to learn a little bit about that company, the history of that company. I mean, this, again, some common sense. I know that's a horrible word to use anymore, but let's use some common sense here. We got to get back to thinking like that. We got to be curious about things. We got to try to figure out things and learn things, not just what we're being taught, but what we figure out. And we got to get back to that because we're not doing it anymore.
Oh, we're not doing it from the top down.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
I mean,
Even in the
absolutely.
military. I
mean,
argue that the military, senior leadership in the military isn't doing
I
it.
think instant gratification has a lot to do with it. I just see it brought that up. I mean, when we were all using MapQuest and using actual maps and having to find the actual answers back in the day, you know what I mean? It just
In the stone tablets, we had to carve out our own maps and stuff.
Now,
we were still
I'm old enough to have
rolling down the windows.
But one thing we didn't mention, you guys, and I know you, I know you exude it, Oak. I can feel it, Mike, to some degree.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Is
I don't even know what it is.
Respect. And I think it's, if you have the empathy and understanding where that person's coming from, whether it's going to be a leader or a peer or a subordinate, is respecting that they will have their own opinion, whether you agree or disagree, and the way you work around it to communicate with one another. I think that's the critical part too, that as part of critical thinking, there's critical communication skills, I think, that we're starting to lack, as well as, I don't know if we understand how to healthy debate anymore.
I absolutely see it. I mean, at what point in this country did we get to the point where if I disagree with you, I must hate you? I mean,
I feel it.
How did we get to that point?
Well, first of all, people made the word manipulation a bad word, right? And Elizabeth, I'm glad that she asked this, right? Because she asked, is getting the results you work for manipulation? I don't think so. It's all in delivery. I love the conversation, right? And look, I test people all the time, because when they ask me, like, hey, what do you do? Right. And like, I'm talking about my personal life. I don't really say this a lot because it always comes off pretentious when you say it online, or I'm going to say it anyway because I feel comfortable with you guys. Right. But I tell people I'm a mass manipulator. And the reason why I do that is because, one, I want to see like how people like think of the word. Right. And two is I want to see if they're going to deep dive into that. Like, what do you mean by that? Or if they're just going to like write me off as like, yo, you must be an asshole. Right. But like, if you think about it, right. Everybody is trying to manipulate you in some way. Like your grandkids, they're trying to manipulate you into getting candy. They're trying to manipulate you into getting the hoverboard for Christmas, right? Like everybody's got a game. It's just human nature. You know what I mean? We're all trying to get something, whether it's words of affirmation, money, you know what I mean? Like we all want something, right? I want people to follow the golden rule, and we're going to kind of circle back. I know I was going to let you guys off the hook here, right? But you're talking earlier about being a servant leader, and I was really, really excited about this. And I can't believe I let this go because we just get sidetracked. But I talk a lot about the golden rule, right? So people naturally assume that I'm going to eat their crap, right? Or like they're going to come at me hard, and then when I tell them no, this is where my boundary is, and this isn't acceptable, right? They always turn it back with that straw man argument, like, hey, you're the golden rule guy. you can't do this.
Golden rule doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. I mean, it's all about respect, and you hit it right on the head, Sia. I mean, it's about respect, and you gotta respect people, and they have a right to their opinion, and I have a right to mine. We can talk about it, we can debate about it, but we've lost. You're exactly right. We've lost that ability. Nobody debates anymore. Nobody has a civil conversation about differences anymore. It's either you agree with me or you must be a bad person.
Well, it's kind of what Elizabeth brought up with her question, right? It's because everyone's stuck in their feelings. You know what I mean? Like, I interrupted you a little bit, but you didn't go pouting. Oh, Mike interrupted me, so he's a big jerk face. You know what I mean? Like, we're still. I mean, like, people are so quick to hit the feeling button now.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're losing our multidimensional facets to our personalities and our who we are as humans, right? Because there's a little too much black and white going on, which is it's unfortunate. Like, I think 90%, 99% of the I only said 90%, 99.9% of the population is gray, right? But there's this assumption that everyone's black or white, and I don't think that's, I worry because social media, I think, feeds into that mentality as well, where, just depends on, where you want to research, or if you don't do any research, social media, if that's your only source of news or opinions or feels, that's extraordinarily dangerous. And I don't know. I mean, Oak, as a person in an authority position, I don't even know English anymore. How do you guide a lot and shape to kind of push people in that direction of like, hey, figure it out? Like, how do you do that? How do you encourage them without saying flat out, like, Google, like, or, how do you do it?
So I think one of the ways that you do when you're in charge of people is that you have to lead by example. So if you are doing things and you let them see that you're doing things, if somebody asks me a question and I don't know, the first thing I do is a lot of the time I'll write down the question. Like when I'm giving a presentation, I always carry a pocket full of 3x5 cards. So if somebody asks me a question that I don't know, I'll hand them a 3x5 card. I'll say, write your question down on this card with your contact information, and I will get back to you when I find the answer.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to go find the answer because they've given me their phone number, their email address, their name, whatever. Yeah. I find the answer and I get back to them. So you're setting the example to saying, look, none of us know all the answers. We all are going to have times where we don't have the right answer. We have to look at it. And if you show people that you're doing that, then they see that it's okay for them to do that.
I think that's great. It's these people are asking some really great questions in the comments too. I wonder how we can get people to be more inquisitive, to be honest with you, because they're talking about the comment culture versus the question culture, and I think
that's a great term.
It really is. We gotta give Red a lot of credit on that too. It's a shame he couldn't make it out on this stage, but I mean, he's exactly right. Before, if somebody like heard a comedian, right, that was using less than colorful language or was saying things that were terrible about a certain type of person, right, people would question, why is this person saying it? What's the goal? Right. And now it doesn't matter what the context is. They're going to just shut you down. You know what I mean? And like,
I feel like as humans, we pendulum swing, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Society does.
I think it's a natural human behavior. I think the question is it's that quintessential idiom, and I get idioms wrong all the time, but it's not the challenge that defines you. It's how you respond to that challenge that defines you. And I think as a culture, we got to find our way. And I think little conversations like this, Mike, with Oak writing books, leaving a legacy, like those are the little bit of efforts that can make a huge impact, even if it's just one individual or, millions of people. I think we just have to be more.
It's kind of like one of his points in his book was, raising that next generation of leaders. I mean, if we're really good leaders and we see this problem, we kind of got to start talking to the grandkids. Man, I feel old.
Yeah, it's absolutely about that next. Leaders create more leaders. You create better leaders. And, like I put in the book, and I wish I could take credit for this great quote, but I can't. Master Sergeant David.
Don't you just wish you do that in a lot of great quotes?
Yeah. But Master Sergeant David Powell, one of the greatest leaders I ever worked with. And, he worked for me technically, but I'm telling you, he was as good a leader as I was, if not better. And one day we were sitting there talking about the great thing we were doing, the importance of developing the future leaders of the Army and the country. And he said to me, he said, boss, great leadership handed down from generation to generation is what develops great nations. And I thought to myself,
I read that quote today in the book when I was going.
Yeah, I thought, what a great quote. And the great thing about that quote, to me, not only is it true, I absolutely believe it's true, but the great thing about it is you can take that word nation and you can substitute company, organization, sports team, hospital, university, whatever you want. It doesn't change the meaning of that quote.
Professional network.
But it's a great quote, and I believe it. I actually believe it, and that's what we have to do. We have to pass down great leadership to our next generation. Otherwise, we're going to get what we deserve.
100%, right? Like, I mean, with all the things that people have sacrificed to get this country to a point, and not only this country, but the whole world, to a point to where we have a lot more freedom than we ever have. I mean, there's lots of places around the world where they don't have our freedom, right? But everyone's kind of moving in the right direction because of the global technology and because the world's getting smaller, right? But at the same time, it's costing too, right? And if we can figure out how to mitigate some of that damage while it's still, getting everybody on board with the way the world should run in regards to treating people right, and making sure everybody gets fed. I mean, it's kind of crazy, I mean, we got so many billionaires and, countries spending all this money on war machines, right? But when we got all these tons of plastic and people starving all over the place, it just, our priorities, I mean, I hope as a society as a whole, like a global society, we kind of work on those over the next couple of decades.
Yeah. It's about leadership, and we got to start producing better leaders, and at all levels, in all professions. Like you said earlier, Mike, every profession has bad people in it. I mean, I don't care what it is, but just because we have one or two bad ones, don't mean you throw the whole profession out and accuse all of them of doing something wrong. We got to get back to being more civil, to asking the right questions, to doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I just don't see a lot of people doing that anymore, or a lot of leaders aren't doing that anymore.
I think instead of focusing on what's dividing us, I think we need to focus on what's pulling us together. What's our common humanity? It's that common denominator, right? Because ultimately, I think I say this all the time, even though I'm abrasive, you get more with sugar, honey than vinegar, right? No, I get it. There are times where I'm full on piss and vinegar and I catch that, but stop it, Mike. Anyway, no, but seriously though, I do think with what you're talking about, Oak, is if we could just focus on the positives, if we could just run, and this is my one political comment I'll make of the day, if we could just run positive ads that pulls commonality in a positive context and not negating the other person as a human or whatever, to me it just will elevate the conversation and lead the rest of our culture and society here, again, we're all talking about United States because we're US based people, into a more mature conversation. It feels like we're just going into like a what do you got, playground fighting. It's like, I know you are, but what am I? I mean, that's the equivalent of our Discord right now.
Straw man arguments and the he said, she said, and the tit for tat stuff. It doesn't really help anybody. But but you know what it is like people energize the nut jobs on both sides. Not to get too political. You know what I mean? the nut jobs are the ones that show up and vote. Because what they do is they tap into the passion, right? So what we really have to do is figure out how do we get the middle people that aren't voting. Because they're disillusioned with the leadership and they're, not trusting anybody on, I think it was Ice-T said it best, right? It's two wings on the same bird. You know what I mean?
Well, I agree. And I absolutely agree. I think, going back to the pendulum thing, I think that's a natural thing in history, and it usually corrects itself. Sometimes it takes longer than other times. But, here in America, I think at least I'm just going to throw it out there, but probably about 75 to 80% of the people are right in the center, either a little bit left or a little bit right of center, but pretty much center. And then you got the other ones on the extreme on the left and right. But
Extreme, that's better than nut jobs.
But the majority, majority of the Americans are either just left of center or just right of center,
Right.
but pretty much center, I think. And I think the pendulum is going to swing back. I think it always does.
Always
It
does.
always has in the past. And being a historian, I think that history does repeat itself, and I think that it will swing back. I don't know when, I don't know how long it'll take, but I think it'll happen. Well, but people like us talking about it can help it
Right.
come around faster than if we just let it all go.
I mean, if we get just a few people to think from watching this, right? And that's all it takes, right? You're just planting the seeds.
Well, it's funny you say that, Mike, because I was on a podcast, I don't know, a while ago, and the guy said to me, he said, when he asked me if I'd be on his podcast, he said, well, I've only been doing, this is only going to be my third podcast, and I only have about 35 people who really follow it. So it may not be worth your time. And I said, listen to me. I said, if I do it and we affect one person, it was worth our time.
I mean, that's the way, like, I look at it, no matter how big I get or how many people watch my shows, right? I mean,
if you help one person, it's worth your time.
I had this, I don't want to dive too many into my stories, right? But I've had a few people over the years that I didn't really expect. I put out content, I put out statements that really got me a lot of crap blowing back my way because I took a strong stance on things, right? And, a lot of people are like, oh, this guy's a racist jerk, or this guy's this, or he's this, that, because I was trying to talk about things that most people just don't talk about. Not that I was being racist or being a jerk, right? I was just trying to sit in the muck, right? And I've had people reach out to me, and some of them 8-9 years later, they're still following me. They're still friends with me on Facebook to this day, right? And I can't tell you how many times I was about ready to give up on something, and somebody sent me that one private message saying, hey, this is how you changed my life.
Yeah.
And it was on this video back.
Isn't that amazing?
Ago. And it was like, I've had videos, right, where 60,000 people watch it in the first day, right? And I've had videos that were absolute stinkers where nobody watched it, right? You go look at my YouTube and you can be like, 30,000, 5, 30,000, 5, 12, 30,000, right?
Yeah.
And once in a while, I'll get that message from that one person of 4 that watched that one video. I'm like, this is why I do it. You know what I mean?
I agree. Absolutely. And I'm sure you run into it too, Sia, with your show, that sometimes you may think, well, that wasn't one of my best shows, but you helped somebody. I promise somebody got something out of that show. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I go around and talk to people, so that I can help people. And it really is. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm not worried. Money is not the issue. I didn't do this to make a lot of money, believe me.
You're certainly not on the show to get money.
Hey, wait, after being on this show, you're going to make money. So sorry.
We took that 2 different directions.
Yeah. But I do this because I believe that it's our job to get out there and help people and to pass the word about what we think is the right answer out there. And so I never turn down a chance to talk to young men and women. Tomorrow I'm going down to a Catholic junior high, and I'm going to talk to a group of junior high students, not about leadership. I have another little presentation I give about how to be successful, the secrets to success. And I talk about goals.
Man, we're going to have you back on.
Yeah. And so I never turn out a chance to talk to young men and women, because that's the future. At some point, old guys like me are going to have to turn around and say, here you go. It's up to you now. And hopefully you do a better job at it than I did. And we got to pass that on to them. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing at this point in my life. It really is my passion.
It's a good passion to have, man. I definitely appreciate it. But definitely want to have you back on sooner or later to talk about the keys to success and how you're going to be doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to be back on sometime, Mike.
Hey, have you seen our speed networking with Ira? Have you seen any of those yet?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, we're going to have to get you on there. It's a little bit more. I don't know if I'd say clown. Yeah, it's more of a clown show. I can't say what I really want to say. But
do you really want the Colonel experiencing that? We just got him to like us. I don't know.
Yes, I totally do. Just because I do a lot of things for shits and giggles, and I think it'd be great.
I think there's a time and place. There's a time and place for everything, right? And I think that's what is so exciting about everything that we're talking about today. And I gotta tell you, Oak, it's such a master class to be able to talk to someone that has gone through the process risen to leadership levels in a industry field that is considered extraordinarily rigid, structured and rigid, but yet for you to come up with these ideas, enforcement of certain concepts is really inspiring. So thank you very much. Because I really, like I said, if I were much younger and walked in and talked to you, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up, without really thinking about it. So
100%. Yeah.
And then I would be like getting in, I'd be like, this person that I'm under is nothing like you. They suck. No, I'm kidding. No, but
well, that's funny that you say that, because
does that happen?
A lot of people that they keep in touch with me, the people that I've brought in the program who've commissioned and are in the Army, and I get one of two groups, and they stay in touch with me, and they'll say, hey, Colonel McCulloch, my battalion commander was a great guy. I'm staying in the Army. Or I'll get somebody who says, that man was toxic, or that lady was toxic. I'm out of here. I'm going to go use my leadership skills in the civilian world. And that's okay. I mean, it's bad that's why they're doing it, but the civilian world needs good leadership, just like the military does. And so I don't think there's a problem with that, but there's a problem that we have toxic leaders anywhere, but certainly in the military.
Now, in your role, right, if you see somebody keeps getting that negative feedback, what do you do about that? Or is there anything you can do about that?
There's nothing I can do about it at all, except I tell them that's one experience. Yeah. I always try to tell people, at least give yourself 2 times, 2 different leaders, because just because that first one was a bad apple doesn't mean.
What I'm saying is, if you have a leader, right? Like, say you have like 12 leaders that you're referring people to, right? And that one leader just gets more complaints than everybody else, right? Is there anything you can do about that?
No, there's nothing I can do about it. Not in the position I'm in right now. No.
Yeah, it's because I'm just kind of curious to see how that works. You know what I mean? Because, like, is there a system of checks and balances with that?
No, unfortunately, there's not. I've always advocated. I've always believed that, our officer evaluation report, or any evaluation report for anybody in the Army, should be a 360-degree evaluation.
It really should be.
It should be somebody above you, your peers, and people below you. And that's the only way you're ever going to get a good picture of what kind of a person and leader that person is. By having the boss, one person, do the evaluation, if I'm doing a good job for that person and I'm getting that person his next promotion or her next promotion because I'm doing the right things and I'm making them look good, they're not going to care what I did to my soldiers, the people below me. They only care about themselves, a lot of them, unfortunately. But if you had a 360 system where people below you get to tell a couple of them get to tell the story, the people who you work with, the peers, get to tell a story, and then the people above you get to tell the story, you're going to get a good picture of somebody. Unfortunately, people have asked me, so how does that work? I said, I'm just a dumb farm boy. I can't figure that one out.
Well, here's the thing. I was actually thinking you're a pretty smart guy, right? And no offense to you, but there's probably been lots of smart men and women, and the people smarter than you even, right? They've been in this. Like, how do we as a country not have a better system in place? Do you think the Army, or do you think our government's open to reevaluating some of those things?
I don't know. I think you'd have to come up with a pretty good system. You'd have to have it a system laid out that
because it's so time tested.
Yeah, but I think there is a way to do it. I just don't know how to do it, but there's got to be a way to do it. And I actually had a 3-star general, somebody who retired, a 3-star general who was a mentor of mine again, and I was talking to him about a month ago, and he and I were talking about this, and he's kind of interested in pursuing it, and so maybe he and I will sit down and we'll try to figure this one out.
Well, I think there'd be a lot of value to it.
There would be.
For sure. So Elizabeth makes a comment, Mike. I don't know if you saw this one, but I love it. She goes, although I'm not a fan of toxic leaders, they will still give you important life lessons.
Oh, this lady's been on fire. I sent her a stream.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, we need to connect. But that's
absolutely. I'd love to connect with Elizabeth, because that is what a great comment. I always tell people, look,
I think that's
you can learn just as much from a bad leader as you can from a good leader.
Well, more.
I don't know how many times I've been standing in a formation and one of my leaders would say something, and I was like, oh my God, I will never do that when I'm in charge. You just put that in the back of your head, in the cat.
Even with personal relationships.
I date myself in the card catalog in the back of your brain. And you just remember that, because you can learn just as much from bad leadership as you can from good leadership. Great comment.
Even bad relationships, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, you know what I mean? Like, if you're really self-aware, right? Like, a lot of us have been in more than one relationship in our life, right? And
my wife keeps telling me that, and I said, no, you didn't have any relationship before.
No, I was the only one. Your moon, sun, and stars, right?
Hey, all my exes had perfect, histories and relationships. So I don't know what you're talking about, you guys.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I mean, if all your exes are the crazy one,
Clearly.
I mean, like, if you're making the same mistakes, right, at 45 that you made at 20 or 25, you've wasted like decades.
Well, that's not a mistake.
You know what I mean? Like,
if you're still doing the same things wrong, then that's not a mistake. That's failure to learn. I mean, it's just it. Now, look, none of us are perfect. I keep trying to convince my wife that I am, but after 35 years, she's not buying it.
She's so onto it.
Yeah. But none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because we are going to make mistakes. Going back to one of the things Sarah said was, what do you do? It's not like what happens to you, it's what you do with what happened to you. And if you make a mistake, it's not about you making a mistake, because we're all going to make mistakes. What did you do after you made the mistake? Did you come up to me and say, hey, boss, I screwed up, but here's how we're going to fix it? Or do you walk up to me and say, hey, did you make excuses? You blame it on somebody else. You try to hide it. Come own it, because that's what leaders do.
Accountability is the big thing. Yeah.
And let's fix it, and let's move on. And we got to do that in life. We got to learn from the mistakes we make. Otherwise we're going to make the same mistakes time and time again. And again, that's not a mistake at that point. That's a failure to learn.
It's a choice. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you're going to say, Sia?
I was going to say, no, these are a lot of like nugget bombs that are getting dropped right now that I'm like, I should have been taking notes. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but Mike A was taking notes. He's writing things down, which is funny. He was writing and not typing.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I keep and in the book I talk about it, a leadership journal, and I believe in a leadership journal. And when I go to a conference, or I go to a lecture or whatever, I'll take notes, and then I go home and I transcribe it into my leadership notebook. And I also put a lot of the quotes that are in my book came from that. If I'm reading a book and I come across a quote, I'll put it in my leadership journal so that I can go back and use it. I used to write things in the margin of books, on the margin of the page. But what's the chances you're going to go back through that book again? Not very often. So if you keep a journal, and nowadays, of course, I'm trying to get it all changed over to digital rather than in an actual notebook.
Crazy world we live in nowadays.
Well, but I think that's okay. So to me, like, I actually like to write, even though my handwriting is like chicken scratch.
You too.
I remember better when I write.
Yeah.
Like, for me to just type it in means nothing. And this is okay. God, I can keep talking, guys, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to bounce in a few minutes here, but. That's where I wonder.
I gotta go about 5 minutes too.
Exactly. So this is where I wonder, like, with technology, is it getting ahead of us as humans? Like, is it getting ahead of us where our ability to be human, to learn or whatever, is technology enabling it where we're almost not cognitively able to process it like properly? I wonder. Like you said, I have to write it down to remember things. If we're all switching to a digital platform, I wonder my memory is going to be as good.
Yeah.
And again.
So again, here, this is what I tell people is, and I tell my freshmen when they come in, and I kind of give them a class on how to study. And I say, okay, you do the reading, you go to the lecture, you hear the professor telling you, you writing down notes, you go back to your room and you reread your notes, and then you study for the test when the test comes. If you can't get it in 5 times of hearing it and working on it, you need to go flip burgers at Burger King. Okay. I'm sorry. I mean, that's how you learn. And you're exactly right. And even if you put it on the digital platform, as long as you're writing it before you do that, and I don't take a notebook or, a laptop to a conference or to a lecture. I got my little notebook and I write in it. And then I'm starting to go back and then I put it into the digital form. So that's just another time that I'm dealing with that information. I'm hearing it, I'm writing it, I'm putting it in the digital format. So I think you're right. It's repetition. At least for me, it's repetition. The more times I can touch it, the more times I can hear it, the more times I can feel it, then I learn it a little bit better. But I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I'll forget. Let me do it and I'll learn it."
Show me and I'll learn it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the same thing as like teaching, like, giving someone a fish and then teaching them how to fish, right? Like you'll know the process, you'll learn it, and maybe you'll get an emotion. And I was actually going to tie it back to Elizabeth, who should have been. You need to invite Elizabeth to talk. She's got some great comments. Is tying that emotion. She says how painful it has to be is a choice, because if you can tie in, lock in an emotion to something or a concept or an activity or a memory, you'll always remember it, because we remember emotions, right? That saying, people may not always remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
In the end.
Absolutely true.
And that's how you can like revisit and kind of, again, that whole leadership thing is, and it's a hard pill to swallow, my friend, because when I worked in corporate and I had to manage a team and work with a team, and there's nothing more fun than managing a team that don't even report to you. That's the most fun when you've got no authority.
Yeah. That's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah. No wonder I, enjoy a glass of wine or 10. But anyway, there's also other healthy mechanisms, I guess.
Well, it is 5 o'clock somewhere, Sia.
That's the thing I like about working online.
Well, and the other thing I always tell people is, if you don't drink all day, if you don't start in the morning, you can't drink all day. So
there you go. That's a true statement, actually. Okay, wait. We're not encouraging certain behaviors. But no, oh my gosh, Oak, it's such a pleasure. And Mike, thank you so much for having me, you guys. And I really appreciate you.
This has been fantastic. I really have appreciated.
Well, we're gonna make this an awkward goodbye. I definitely appreciate you guys coming on.
Anytime you want me back, Mike, to talk about anything else, we can talk about success. We can talk more about leadership. I mean, we can talk about leadership. That's what I tell people. We can talk about leadership all semester. We can have a whole long semester class on leadership and still not touch everything that we need to talk about.
Oh, I'm definitely. We might have to change the show to Mike and mic'd up with Mike and Sia or something, because he carried the weight here today.
Oh, she did a great job.
I definitely want to get the two of you on here. We want to get this Elizabeth lady up here too, and
she needs to contact me, because I want to talk to her.
I sent her an invite for sure. And then I also want to get you to chat with Don Williams. I don't know if you had an opportunity to talk with him, but I think you and Don Williams would get along tremendously.
Yeah, he sent me a message the other day, and we're gonna link up. We haven't yet, but we're going to.
Oh, he's a cool guy. He's actually worked with like half the Fortune 500 companies too. So I think you guys would get along great.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on, and I can't wait to continue this somewhere down the road.
Well, definitely. We'll be sending some invites. And thank you to everybody that tuned in with your brilliant comments. Red, Elizabeth, everybody. Hope you all have yourselves a great day. And we are taking off.
Bye.
Thank you.